me, it was the calf feeder, automatic feeder was the labour saving tool that probably made the biggest difference from rearing calves. Like we were probably doing the bucket feeding system, which was a fine system and it worked, but I suppose it was probably, you were talking 1.5 to 2 hours a day either end of the day after a day's work feeding and doing a job as feeding and bedding. Whereas at the moment I can get it down, provided there's no issues in the calf shed, you could get it down to as little as 45 minutes to an hour max.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc beef podcast for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan and on this week's episode I'm joined by dairy beef farmer Philip O'Neill, who operates a calf-to-store beef enterprise alongside a tillage enterprise while working off farm. Philip discusses the practical lessons he has learned, the labour saving achieved and the key management practices that have helped maintain excellent calf health and performance. I'm also joined by his Teagasc advisor Alan Carey, who discusses the wider lessons for dairy beef farmers and the importance of reviewing this year's calf rearing system ahead of next spring. Philip, before we begin, can you describe your farm system?
The farm we operate really is a calf to beef and a tillage farm. We're growing winter and spring cereals along with forage crops for the beef enterprise. I farm in a registered farm partnership with my mother Denise. We do spring calves and we rear them into stores. We try to keep things simple as there's only two of us on the farm. So we split the workload of the cereals between winter and spring. So there's no glut of work, and we buy the calves in the spring when the tillage enterprise, just before the work kicks off on that side. We rear the calves, the yearlings and year and a halves, with the majority of them being sold at Mart. Our breed of choice is Frisian and Angus bull calves, as they're readily available in our area. And look, we seem to just get on well with the Frisian and the Angus on performance, and look, they suit our system.
And how do you combine, buying in the calves, rearing the calves in the spring, along with the tillage enterprise while you're also working off farm?
Buying the calves in, we try and buy early February calves when it's a quiet time of the year. So look, if calves are born there in the middle of January, we'd aim to have them probably on the farm for around the 10th to the 15th of February, just before the tillage work kicks off, with the intention of having them fully reared, heading for weaning for around Patrick's Day. And I'm kind of fortunate enough then, the farm facilities are good enough that allows me to have work the two of them together. We get the calves in, as I said, the middle of February, and tillage work is quiet at that time, and we just kind of focus on the calves for them a few weeks and then get them up and running, get them right, and then when the weather prevails in March and April, we can get onto the land doing the tillage work.
And I suppose labour is often the biggest challenge, particularly around the calf rearing process. And this year you took a different approach to rearing calves.
I suppose working off farm and having two enterprises and labour limited, we kind of made a decision a couple of years back there. I suppose, look, we were efficient enough on the crops enterprise with obviously machinery and equipment, but the only way to kind of improve things on the rearing the calf side was either go automatic feeder or get the trailed teat feeder. And look, I just thought maybe the automatic feeder was the way to go. We kind of looked at them, and to be fair, it was kind of a system that it suited what we were doing, and it was easy that both of us could manage it. If one of us were busy or one of us were away, one of us would manage on our own to feed or do the calves if needs be.
And from your experience using it and from the process of going through investment in it, what advice would you give to farmers considering going down that path?
I suppose research would be the biggest thing. I suppose before you do anything, I suppose talk to other farmers that are doing different systems. There's no right or wrong system. Every farm will have their own system that works for them. I found prior to buying the automatic feeder, we spent about 12 months going around just talking and listening to different opinions from farms, what systems worked and if they were to do it again, what would they change? And I suppose that's key really, that you couldn't have enough advice really. It's very easy to buy the machine, but it's the practicality and getting everything right is where it was. And I suppose the big change from going to bucket feeding to the automatic feeder is prior to the feeder, you were dealing with pens of 15 calves. You put the milk bar over and you feed them milk, whereas when you have the automatic feeder, you've two big pens and you've two stalls feeding either side. So if there's no room for error, if something goes wrong, you have to just deal with it.
And I suppose from that experience, what was the biggest lessons that you've learned getting the system working efficiently?
The machine is only as accurate as the user sets it. So I suppose like that, first year when we got it, obviously it was set up by the man we bought it off. But I suppose, look, I was very cagey the first year. Just I left it to the settings that I was shown. But I suppose once you get used to the machine, if you find calves are falling behind or anything, you can change the milk curve. And I suppose the beauty of it is that the calf is being fed 24 hours a day. A little and often there was no issues with bloat, but bloat or scouring. I found there hygiene was probably the biggest thing really with the machine itself. Like the machine washes itself twice a day, but when you've every animal going into the stall of the feeder, cleanliness has to be. So like what we were doing was changing the teats twice a day, cleaning the stalls, just with a bit of Milton. But like in fairness, look, once you got confidence, like anything, once you get confidence in it, you could work it in such a way that suited you and your animals. And like what I found there was the weaning transition was very easy because it did a gradual step down approach from the full concentration down to very little, and there was no stress on the calves or the farmer.
And I suppose you mentioned their hygiene is very important, and I suppose the calf health, that's a critical part of the calf rearing process. What management practices do you think helped maintain healthy calves or reduced need for treatments?
It starts from, I suppose, your facilities, good clean facilities, and I suppose we buy direct from farm, like, so from a biosecurity point of view, the calves have only one move from where we buy them to our farm, and look, everything from the box being disinfected between loads and shed being clean, fresh straw. And I suppose key is probably good access to fresh water. Like we'd be emptying water trucks multiple times a day. Just you couldn't have enough fresh water to the animal. But we also do kind of a program then once the calves arrived and are settled and on the feeder. A couple of days after, we do like coccidiosis, pneumonia, IVR. We do all that, and prior all that is part of our health management, which we do in discussion with our vets. And the other thing, look, I suppose fresh air and dry bedding is probably key as well. Look, if you can keep everything in good order, the calves are healthy, and like that, it's the small things that make a big difference. I find anyway. It's not the technology, like.
And at this stage of the process, what's the calf health plan from now until housing?
After doing dung samples there a few weeks ago, they've been dosed there, or drenched, sorry. So from now until housing, we will just do another dung sample and just see what way the pressure is, I suppose, with the dry weather at the moment. Pressure with worms or lice or things isn't a problem, but we'll just monitor it. But all calves are healthy, there's no coughing. And look, I suppose they're healthy outside, and they've plenty of grass to keep them going.
That's great, Philip. I suppose just a final comment for farmers that might be considering an automatic feeder, or from your experience rearing calves and the changes that you've made, the fact you're working on farm and operating a mixed farm system, what labour efficiency tools do you think other farmers could implement on their farm?
Obviously, for me, it was the calf feeder, automatic feeder was the labour saving tool that probably made the biggest difference from rearing calves. Like we were probably doing the bucket feeding system, which was a fine system and it worked, but I suppose it was probably, you were talking 1.5 to 2 hours a day, either end of the day after a day's work feeding and doing a job as feeding and bedding. Whereas at the moment, I can get it down. Look, if provided there's no issues in the calf shed, you could get it down to as little as 45 minutes to an hour max. Either way, like when you come in the morning, you check your screen, you see if there's any animals in trouble, whether they didn't drink or whether there's a sickness. And other than that, then you just bed them every second day, you feed them, and it's an easy system when it is up and running. And like I find there, once on stall the calves are up and running, it's a very easy system. You can get around, do your other jobs in the yard. Like you don't have a defined feeding time. You can go up first thing in the morning, check your screen, sort out any issues that's in the shed, and you can go about your day's work. Then you can pop in again at lunchtime, or if there's issues, you can check up on them. And I suppose, look, just being organised, I suppose, talk talk to your calves as well. I suppose have a time frame when your calves are going to come, have your facilities ready to go, your gates hanging, and just and have your kitchen then obviously with all your tools that you need if you have sick animals or whatever. So basically is try and be as efficient as you can really when you have the time, because when the calves hit the ground, you're busy enough without all that hassle coming at you.
Alan, as Philip's advisor and you're working with other dairy beef farms, managing labour in the spring can be a huge concern.
Yeah, no, of course. Look, I'm interacting with Philip and other clients, and we have a discussion group going there as well. It's great to get other farmers' perspectives on things. So what Philip might be doing very well, another farmer might be doing very well, and Philip can give advice on that. Like Philip actually mentioned there, it's being ready. What we see is being ready for the calves in the land. Have your shed washed out, dried, bedding, gates up, feeders ready, and have all that there. So you're not chasing your tail. So you're not filling one pen and then trying to get everything else ready. Just little things like that. Once the calves are on farm, work seems to get that bit easier and it gets more consistent. And the good weather in the spring then obviously helps. We can't control that. But so when they're prepared for that, it's great. Just a bit of a comeback there with the automatic feeders. We actually held a discussion group meeting there on Philip's farm last January 25, wasn't it?
Mm.
And we went through the automatic feeders, and it was good. After I think 2 or 3 people in the group managed invested in them after that. It's just give yourself plenty of time to if you're going down the TAMS route to look at this, because if you want them for spring, we'll say 27, you might want to go looking at maybe the TAMS application, everything now as soon as possible, because there can be a bit of a backlog on that.
And I suppose now is a good time, Alan, like you're reviewing the process of spring rearing calves 2026 and you're assessing, what changes could be made for next year. For listeners that's listening into what Philip has said and what your experience with your discussion group, what factors should listeners use to assess how spring calving season rearing the calves went in 2026?
Yeah, so look, it's very much farm by farm basis, Catherine. But what I like to do with my farmers, especially this time of year, is we kind of sit down and have a chat about the calf rearing process and what went well and what could be improved on. So then, let's say what didn't go to plan. So based off their answers, then on that, maybe pick 2 or 3 achievable tasks that can be done, and then put in place for 2027 for when the calves come on. So just something simple like, feeding took a bit longer. So maybe get bigger feeders, have everything ready to go before the calves arise. Maybe a revised vaccination or health plan with your vet. Little things like that, just to get just 3 or 4 very achievable things that you think yourself that might make things easier. But it's very much down to the farm. And you'll be surprised, like farmers are willing to say, geez, I could have done that a lot better, or this went very well now. And then ask someone why it went well, so you can actually share that information with other farmers as well. So it's a great perk of having a discussion group as well, is to share all different ideas and stuff like that.
And reviewing the herd health plan at this stage of the year really gives farmers the opportunity to make changes. Maybe there was a ventilation issue in the shed, or maybe it is a vaccination programme that's required.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually, look, I'm not asking everyone to go out and build a brand new shed. That's not achievable. But even something as simple as changing from venting sheet into oxygen bore sheet to allow a bit more ventilation, or maybe use a bit more straw on one end of the shed because the slope is going down there to keep the animals drier and warmer. Just little things like that. Like, it doesn't have to be massive changes that will take months to do. Stuff that can just be kind of changed fairly quickly, and you can see quite a good impact. And not massive investment needed either.
And you mentioned there is TAMS investments available for anyone operating a calf to beef system.
Yeah, so there's the couples things we're getting through is the automatic feeders are kind of popular there, right, for 25. To be in place 26. There's weighing scales is a good one with head scoops, things like that. Updating crushes, our handling facilities is there as well. So little things like that, just to make life that bit easier. Yeah.
Input costs on the system are quite high in every beef system at the moment, and buying calves is also very high in this system. From your experience working with the discussion group and what Philip is doing on his farm, going forward, where do you see the key areas for farmers to manage costs?
So look at these input costs, or variable costs, we can call them. Look, no one saw calf prices going as high as it went, so that was kind of out of control, but it's managing everything else. To be fair, I'm working with a fairly good group of lads now, and they're not afraid to tell me their views or tell each other what they think. But a lot of them would be into the simple stuff, Catherine, like Proper nutrient management plan to know where to get the best bang for the buck out of the fertilizer. Testing the slurry to know, right, will 2,500 gallons do instead of 3,000 gallons, things like that. And even coming down then to the weighing is a big one, like, like weighing your animals, see if they're achieving stuff, what needs to win before there's damage done, or before the animals fall back a bit. Testing silage is quite a few lads tested silage and they come to me to say, look, how much ration or how much of X, Y, or Z will I feed with this to get my growth rates over the winter? So that reduces input cost in of unnecessarily wasting stuff or putting stuff in that's not necessarily used.
And I suppose at this stage of the year, a lot of second cuts are being made at the moment, and you mentioned there silage testing. What's the ideal time to go test silage and put that plan in place to maximise performance over the winter?
So look, just in relation to silage there, and Catch, I think a lot of these lads now will be doing fodder budgets and stuff, and they haven't done already. It's something I'm kind of off topic a small bit, but I'm some kind of noticing. People will say to me in the first cut, "Oh, well, and I made 400 bales," but they kind of forget that they might have fed out 30 or 40 over the dry spell we've had here, especially in East Cork. So just allow for all them as well, and then do a revised budget. Like I tell a lot of my clients, it's better looking at it now than looking for it in January or February. So yeah, look, the silage goes in. It's usually tested there around October by most people. There's also come back. Usually we can see a small bit of like a farmer wouldn't be sure. Like Philip, you had a case where he wasn't really sure was there silage that I was going to say poor, but he thought it would be better, and then done a more representative sample, and they came back to say, yeah, that's probably better. So look, don't be afraid to question results or even resample as well if you don't think it's good enough. But it's just getting a good representative test, and then coming in, then like it's a huge money saver, like an input cost saver, is having a silage tested to know what you're actually feeding and are the animals going to gain on it. But there's kind of a competition kind of here as well, that who has the best silage made towards the end of the year, and it's a bit of crack when it comes to group as well.
And I suppose that's where the big saving can be, that you're actually matching the amount of meal that's been fed to the silage quality. As you said, it's a saving there rather than feeding meal that might not have been needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and maybe if your silage is very good then, and people kind of overcomplicate diets as well, trying to top in with other stuff that might necessarily be needed. Like if someone tested their silage, it's a great foundation to know what does need to go in, and you can match everything after that then.
And I suppose on the other side, if farmers are under supplementing with meal, that can have a knock-on effect next spring with the performance of the cattle over the winter.
It's a big thing like that, 0.6 kilos a day over the winter. Like it isn't really being achieved in quite a few cases. Like, and they only kind of notice it when they're coming out or they're light. But weighing there, like, is hugely important. Like a lot of these lads are probably weighing 2 or 3 times a year. They're weighing in, especially when they go in, and then when they come out again next spring, and they have a fair idea what they're doing there, and it is tweaking it.
That's great, Alan. Thanks very much, and thanks very much, Philip, for joining me on the show.
Thank you.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Philip and Alan for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.